Let me start with something uncomfortable. If you're an artist, a writer, a musician, a filmmaker, a painter, there's a good chance you've told yourself this story at least once. My pain is where my best work comes from. Maybe you didn't say it out loud. Maybe you'd never admit it publicly. But quietly, you've believed it. That if you healed too much, stabilized too much, became too happy, something sacred would die inside you. Your edge, your depth, your truth. And honestly, you wouldn't be alone. Because our culture loves the image of the tortured artist, the poet who drinks themselves into oblivion, the painter who starves for their vision, the musician whose heartbreak becomes legend only after they're gone. Pain, we're told, is the price of greatness. But here's the question no one likes to ask. Are artists actually honoring their pain? Or are they romanticizing it to avoid letting it go? And more importantly, what is pain really doing to creativity? Is it fuel? Or is it a cage we've decorated so beautifully we forgot it's a prison? Let's talk about it. The myth of the tortured artist. We don't just stumble into this belief, we're taught it from the very beginning. Think about the artists we mythologize. Van Gogh, unheard of while alive, revered after death. Sylvia Plath, brilliance intertwined with despair. Kurt Cobain, pain turned into poetry and then tragedy. We don't just admire their work, we romanticize their suffering. We tell the story as if the pain was necessary, as if the art couldn't exist without the wound. And slowly, quietly, a dangerous equation forms. Pain equals depth. Healing equals loss. So when an artist feels miserable, unstable, or broken, instead of asking, "What do I need?" they ask, "How do I turn this into something meaningful?" Which sounds noble until you realize what's happening underneath, when pain becomes identity. Here's the thing no one tells you. Pain doesn't just hurt, it organizes your identity. If you've suffered deeply, your pain becomes a lens. It gives you language, it gives you perspective, it gives you a story about who you are. And for artists, identity and expression are tightly intertwined. So healing doesn't just mean feeling better, healing threatens something scarier. Who am I without my pain? What do I write about if I'm no longer wounded? What makes me interesting if I'm okay? At that point, pain stops being something you're experiencing and starts being something you're protecting. Not consciously, not maliciously, but subtly. You revisit the memory. You reopen the wound. You keep the sadness alive just long enough to extract something beautiful from it. And over time, something strange happens. You don't just express pain, you start curating it. The difference between expression and attachment. This is where things get nuanced. There's a massive difference between expressing pain and clinging to pain. Expressing pain is honest. It's cathartic. It's a way of metabolizing experience. Clinging to pain is different. Clinging says, "I need this suffering to stay close because without it, I'm afraid I'll disappear." A lot of artists confuse the two. They think staying close to pain is the same as staying authentic. But authenticity isn't about reliving the wound, it's about integrating it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Unintegrated pain doesn't make art deeper, it makes it repetitive. Why so much art feels stuck in the same wound? Have you ever noticed this? An artist releases one raw, powerful piece born from real suffering. It resonates. People connect. They feel seen. And then, the artist keeps returning to the same theme, the same heartbreak, the same trauma, not because there's more to say, but because that's the only place they know how to speak from. At that point, pain isn't a source anymore, it's a loop. And loops feel deep. but they're actually shallow. Depth isn't about intensity. Depth is about movement, transformation, insight, evolution. Pain without movement is just stagnation with good lighting. Why we're afraid of happy art. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. A lot of artists secretly believe that happiness is boring, that peace is dull, that contentment has nothing to say. But ask yourself, is that actually true? Or is it just unfamiliar territory? Most people haven't seen many examples of art created from wholeness. We've seen art from longing, from grief, from rage, but art from clarity, from grounded joy, from quiet confidence. That kind of creativity doesn't scream, it resonates. And resonance doesn't hit instantly, it unfolds slowly, which makes it harder to trust. Pain is a doorway, not a home. Here's a reframe that changes everything. Pain isn't meant to be lived in, it's meant to be passed through. In many Eastern philosophies, suffering is seen as a teacher, not a badge of honor, not an identity. A teacher. You listen, you learn, you bow. And then you move on. Western creative culture, on the other hand, says, build a house there, decorate it, invite an audience. And that's where artists get stuck. They mistake the doorway for the destination. The hidden cost of romanticizing pain. Let's be honest about what romanticizing pain actually does. It delays healing. It normalizes self-destruction. It turns suffering into proof of legitimacy. Some artists feel guilty when life starts to improve, as if joy is a betrayal of their past self, as if healing means their pain didn't matter. So they keep one foot in misery, just enough to feel real, just enough to keep the muse alive. But the muse doesn't thrive in pain. The muse thrives in presence, and pain pulls you backward. What actually happens when artists heal? Here's what no one tells you, because it doesn't fit the myth. Artists who heal don't lose their creativity. They gain range. They stop circling the same emotional drain and start seeing the world with clarity. Their work becomes less frantic, but more precise, less dramatic, but more honest. They're no longer trying to prove their depth. They simply express it. And yes, some audiences resist this shift because pain-based art invites emotional consumption. Healed art invites reflection. And reflection is harder. The ego's relationship with suffering. Let's go one layer deeper. Pain gives the ego a story. I am this way because I suffered. That story can be comforting. It explains everything. It justifies stagnation. It shields vulnerability. Healing threatens the ego because it removes the excuse. Without pain as the central narrative, something terrifying appears. Responsibility, choice, freedom. And freedom is scarier than suffering. Because suffering is familiar. What if pain isn't the source? Here's a radical thought. What if pain isn't the source of art, but the friction that reveals it? The source might actually be awareness, sensitivity, curiosity, presence, attention. Pain just forces you to look. But once you learn how to look without being hurt, your art doesn't disappear. It expands. The quiet truth. Artists rarely say out loud. Most artists don't actually want to suffer. They just don't want to become ordinary. And they've been taught, subtly, relentlessly, that healing equals mediocrity. But that's a lie. Mediocrity doesn't come from peace. It comes from unconsciousness, from repetition, from imitation, from fear. A healed artist isn't shallow. They're available. So, do artists romanticize their own pain? Too much. Yes, not because they're dramatic, but because pain once saved them. It gave them meaning when nothing else did. And it's hard to let go of something that once made you feel alive. But here's the truth worth sitting with. Pain may have introduced you to your creativity, but it doesn't deserve lifelong credit. You don't owe your suffering a sequel. If you're an artist listening to this, ask yourself gently, am I expressing pain or protecting it? Am I afraid of who I'd become without it? And what might my art say if it didn't have to bleed to be real? Sometimes the bravest creative act isn't turning pain into art. It's letting the pain end and trusting that something deeper remains. If this resonated, sit with it. No answers required, just honesty. And as always, create from awareness, not wounds.